So welcome everyone to this next Steps Accommodation Programme webinar. Okay, what I am going to do is I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff today. I'm going to go through the cover some of the things for you about getting those that co-production into your bid. So 3 principles for co-production, the 3 keys to collecting. Oh, let me just close this down. 3 keys to collecting service user voices. And I'm using the term service user voices. I know that a lot of us don't agree with that. However, when I saw it in the guidelines for writing your bids, actually I'll accept that. I've been called lots of things. If we can get co-production, I'm happy with, they call me what they like. So I'm going to use the term service users where I wouldn't normally today. I'm going to talk about some of the key barriers to getting co-production or service user voices into your bids, including managing expectations, because I think that's quite a big one. We're going to talk about 3 methods to collect voices and how to frame it. So for those of you who originally signed up when we first put this out, now there's a couple of changes, the framing it part and the 3 methods to collect voices. That's because we have been really active going out there, reaching around the country through our network, either individuals or groups, finding out what's going out there, some of the challenges and some of the things to help you guys. So this is a genuinely co-produced webinar and some amazing people have contributed to it. Oh, is that going to work? Let's see if we can, technical issue already. Okay, so we've got an hour to go through some stuff. I have got a lot of stuff to go through and I've put a lot of it on PowerPoint, and that's because I am going to share you the PowerPoint so you can refer back to it. I am recording this. I'm going to try and either capture the audio or capture the film for you and put that somewhere where you can access that too. Although we've only got an hour, what I am conscious of that maybe there are lots and lots of questions, and you'll see who I am and who Expert Link on in a minute, and maybe there's some questions relevant to this, the Next Steps Accommodation Programme that you might want to ask. I would encourage you to use the Q&A to do that and upvote and stuff. If we need to hang over after the hour, I'm happy to do that to answer questions. I have got a poll. We'll do a poll in a second. I just want to see where we are in the room. As I said, we're going to share with you the PowerPoint and the video and stuff. What's really important is we've got a survey. We'd use SurveyMonkey feedback. Okay, what's really important for us would be helpful is some feedback on this, and in that you could put A, about the webinar, but feedback maybe about your areas and stuff like that. And you'll see as we go through this webinar why we might want that and why is that so important, because it gives us an opportunity to support you guys, hopefully. Okay, so really quickly, a little bit about Expert Link. We are a national organisation. We are a national organisation, and our values are humanity, so we absolutely believe in people and their potential. We believe in honesty, or values honesty, so that if we want to create change, we have to come from a place that's genuinely honest, and that's tough and hard, I know. And actually it's about bringing hope into our world, because without hope, what have we got? What our purpose is to amplify voices of those who've lived experience of multiple disadvantage, which is you guys, some of you here with lived experience, but some of you represent those guys too and work with them. And one of the ways that we do that is through co-production, one of the big ways that we do it. We do lots of stuff. We do lots of training. We've got free webinars. There's this webinar. We do a great one on what is co-production, covering the principles and the benefits and all sorts of stuff. That might be on our website now, so sign up to that one if you wish, if you're new to co-production. We do weekly, it was weekly, it's now monthly conversations on co-production. And I use it as a training because actually it's a group, it's a place where up to 50 people can gather and share experiences around co-production, so we can all learn and share and grow together. as I said, we do lots of training. So a couple of bits of that. We do a lot of peer research training, train people to become peer research. I think there's a group meeting right now who we worked with up in Blackpool, and I, myself and Chris have just dipped in and had a chat with them. And we another one that's we do is nuts and bolts of co-productions. It's how to get your co-production going in your area. And by the way, all of this, guys, this training that Grow, again, it's from our community, learning and developing with them. We do a lot of research. We've got a national advisory panel. They're key. I'm going to mention those in a minute. They meet weekly. They meet weekly, but they do an awful lot of stuff and influencing at government level across the board. As I said, we do a lot of peer research. We do at the moment an evaluation. So we're just doing evaluations for the Fulfilling Lives, for those of you who know that. And we do a lot of consultations. Consultations being, I think it's Dame Carol Black. We did the consultation with her, with our community, and now, bless, she wants to come and meet our community, which is absolutely fantastic. Who am I? Most of you, I'm guessing quite a few of you in the room know me anyway, but just so as you know where I'm coming from and where my experience is to bring to you guys and share with you, is in 2009, I helped set up the Smart Recovery in England, did the pilot in London, the South East. I helped set up a Homeless Advisory Panel and chaired it for 3 years. My first piece of co-production was The Well, which is a day centre down in Croydon. I set up the NECG with Lynn Cole, who was the original lead at Big Lottery for the Fulfilling Lives project, NECG, National Expert Citizens Group, Fulfilling Lives, and I co-authored Hard Edges. I sit in lots of influencing groups around the country, local, regional, and national. Last 2 years ago, I was in Wasson Island with I was invited to join the top 30 most active systems changers globally. They came from all over the world, far brighter than me too. I also sit on Thames Reach's board, and I sit on the government's Rough Sleepers Advisory Panel, and of course, I set up Expert Link. I'm the founder and chief exec. What I will say is when we set up Expert Link, when we talk about co-production and stuff, I went out, it took me a while, but I went out and we spoke to over 4,700 people directly or indirectly and said, look, we've got this thing, it's called Expert Link, what do you want it to do? And we were asking our community of those with lived experience of multiple disadvantage. What's important to note there, well, actually, take a step back. I'm also an ex-drug addict, slept rough, been caught up in the criminal justice system and suffer from mental illness. But don't let that, get in the way. Expert Link don't own the monopoly on the truth. The same as me. I don't know. I own my truth, and you own your truth. Expert Link owns theirs. But actually, we don't have a monopoly on it, which is really important for us, I think. What I am doing today is I'm sharing my experience and my journey and what I know to be true in my world. That's the world of Expert Link and this huge network of people that we've got around the country. I think there's 1,200 or plus people directly involved with us. We've got a number of groups that we're involved with, and of course then there's the wider community. What you choose to do with my experience is totally up to you. I'm not telling you to do anything. Okay. So let's put a bit of context about what we're talking about today. So the next steps accommodation program. So we know it's in 2 parts, don't we? 105 million, which is the support, the short-term or interim support for local authorities at the moment to support people. And then there's, excuse me, 161 million other funding for longer term solutions and plans to take people who are rough sleeping or potentially rough sleeping and homeless, set them on the way to permanent accommodation and what have you. And we also know that we've got to get our bids in by the 20th of August. So there's a couple of bits that I pulled out of this. Time is short, isn't it? And I know that for some of you, that's going to be really, really challenging. So hopefully today, when we go through our stuff, that if you pick up one little nugget, one little piece, one little thing that helps you, that'll be great. Absolutely fantastic. What we also know is that within all the paperwork and stuff like that, there is a part from the government that talks about national assets. So it's becoming national assets. Excuse me. As I said, I was a bit nervous. Okay, so we know that. What we also know, and this is a direct quote actually, is from Para 53, as well as MHCLG, Homes England and the GLA, co-production should be carried out in collaboration with relevant stakeholders and partners, including, number one on the list, service users, support providers, health and social care commissioners, local voluntary organisations, probation services, registered providers and landlords. I can't tell you how excited I was when I saw that, because I know that we do, you'll see in a minute, we did quite a lot with MHCLG. And for me, that was absolutely fantastic. I am really, really conscious though, the same as you guys are, that that's time is a real challenge and a real barrier to what we want to achieve here, co-production. What I will say though is I'll drop in is that MHCLG are conscious of the time as well. They know that it's tight, you know, and I think they're working within a framework that they have to work with. Okay, so let's just mention a couple of things that we do and we don't know. So we're starting from that place of honesty, aren't we, that we talked about? We know we know what's what. Excuse me. What we do know is that, or what we don't know is what influence the co-production will have on final outcomes. So we don't know whether your part, we know that it says in the guidelines, co-production, and it's explicit about service users. What weight that gets on you is put on you getting your bid or not, well, we don't know that. Getting a successful bid, we genuinely don't know that. But we do know that it is in the guidelines. Some other things that we know, and I'm really, really clear about, is that MHCLG do co-production. And I've got loads of evidence to stack that up. So they have their teams out on the ground, the Russell for Initiative teams and others out there working with local authorities in areas to support them to write bids so that they're successful. So when they put them to MHC, so they're sending people, think about it logically, they're sending people out there to help you to write bids so that they can give you money. They have the Rough Sleepers Advisory Panel, of which I'm a member of. I sit down there and take the voice, and I hope I represent the voices of the lived experience of multiple disadvantage and homelessness and rough sleeping and what have you. I know that they do training around co-production, and I know that to be true because relatively senior members of MHCLG has been on our training, our co-production training. So I know that this is quite a big thing for them, and I know that that through conversations, if you look at the last tender document that you possibly got hold of from them, there was one line about co-production, and in this one there's a whole section around co-production within the guidelines. So I know it's quite a big thing for them. I know that I have conversations at director level at MHCLG and we talk about co-production, and I know that that's something that's very, very important to them. I could share a whole lot more, but I'm sure I'd probably get into trouble. But they're into co-production. You got the message, I think. And I think what's also important to note here is the National Advisory Panel. This part of their co-production. So when the COVID thing came along, we were thinking about really, really quickly, right, what can we do? We're not frontline. We can't run out there with, you know, food parcels and getting people into, that's not our role. Our role then maybe is making sure that there's a complete feedback loop for MHCLG as they're going through all the things that they needed to do and the policies that they come up with. So we were meeting weekly and sending reports. So the NAP is a bunch of guys that cover the 4 corners of England and everything in between. Some incredibly amazing people. There's an academic on there. There's everybody's got lived experience. Academics on there. There are people at management level, down to people who are volunteering, doing outreach, and really not far into their journey of change. So it's a real eclectic mix. They were feeding back to MHCLG on a weekly basis what was happening on the ground. So MHCLG was saying or doing this, and we were giving them feedback of what was happening there. This is really, really important because actually they've been along and attended some of these meetings. We had somebody there last week from MHCLG, a lead in one of the places, in one of the departments. We had, it won't mind me dropping his name here, Jeremy Swain, great guy, ex-chief exec of Thames, which now works with Dame Louise and everyone at director level there, he's attended one of our meetings as well. So they were getting that feedback. So co-production then. One of the things that the NEP put out, and it's on their part of our website, is the voices, choices and aspirations. And this is collected again from our network around the country. And what people were saying when we were doing stuff is they want their voices heard and listened to. They want a choice. Whatever that choice is, it's about having a choice, even within the limited resources that we have. And it was also about their aspirations being supported, not necessarily met, but being supported. And we'll talk about, I'll maybe mention that a bit later on. Off the back of that letter, we had a phone call with Director of Homelessness and Rough Sleeping at, she's a wonderful person, by the way, up at MHCLG. So there is that whole thing for them about co-production. Okay, so we know that they're into co-production, and we don't know what if there's going to be a point score or anything else like that when it comes down to putting your bid in, but we know where they are. I think that was important to note. I think it's all, I wanted to share this because I think you need to know this too, that our research suggests that probably only 20% of areas are using service users in their bid process, you know, in their co-production. And most of these are probably have lived experience groups, so they've already got groups set up. That's from talking to two of the groups that we run, but national groups that we run. But it's also about us reaching out and speaking to other people and collecting stuff. I was having emails yesterday. I had an email this morning, all about this type of stuff, saying, look, listen, that there's not enough service user involvement here. I just think it's important that you know that if we're coming from an honest place and want to create change. So moving on a little bit, one of the challenges that we have is with co-production is when you go out there, it all gets a bit confusing. I mean, I'm curious now, I'm not necessarily going to do a policy, but when people think of co-production, what do they think of? Often it's this blooming great big manual, and it's got ladders in there and you know, squares and triangles, and it's got this, and you've got to do that, and you've got to do it. And it's really, it can be overwhelming. And actually, where would you start if the manuals are this thick and there's so many of them? And I think that's a real barrier to a lot of areas doing co-production. So I've been doing co-production since 2010, not knowing at the beginning, and this has been my world for such a long time. And from our network and from that experience of people, we put it down to 3 things. And I think these are the 3 things that you need to hang on to when you're doing co-production. Put the manuals aside, because you're probably not, if you're new to it, you're probably not going to start if you've got that. But there's 3 little simple principles. Don't forget, I am going to send you the slides. You don't need to write this down. Okay, so no one owns the truth. Okay, and the wisdom and the power should reside within the collective. So that's about not coming to this arrogantly saying that I know everything and I know what's best for you and you. This is about coming like, I've been on my journey. I have my wisdom, I have my experience, and I'm going to share it with you guys. You guys share yours. And collectively together, all of that wisdom will give us the power to create the change that we want to create. So the wisdom and power sits within a collective and not held by one individual. There's lots and lots of benefits to that. We talk about on other webinars if you want to come along to those. All stakeholders are afforded every opportunity to sit at the table equitably. So this is really, really important. And it works at lots of different ways. It works with chief execs and services and other parts of the system coming and sitting down with table lived experience, the same as it works the other way. One of the things that we often don't do is that we don't allow people the time and space that they need to be able to, or opportunity to sit at that table. What I mean by that is if you get a little post-it note, write down you're having a little meeting and all people with lived experience are allowed to join, and you take it and you stick it on a notice board the size of a wall that's covered with great big bright posters, that's not going to get seen. The same as if people have got to travel halfway across town and they have to make a decision about whether they use the money to pay for the bus fare or whether they're going to eat that day. That's not affording people every opportunity. Having said that, if you are reaching out to other parts of the system, whether it's health, whichever part it is, you know, that's not, but whichever part of the system, and they choose not to attend, same as people with lived experience, if you've afforded them every opportunity, you know, you've given them the time to join there, and they choose not to, and then you know in your heart you've done everything right, that's cool. That's good for us. Okay, we focus on the group purpose using a strength-based approach. So you'll see that we talk a lot about framing stuff and strengths. So I'm not going to ask. I talk about shoplifting often, and actually, when we talk about strength, don't want to know who's been shoplifting. But often what we do is we look at people and see them and judge them on their behaviour and the labels that we've given them. And actually, if you sat and thought about it, there's a whole bunch of skill sets in shoplifting. Behaviour sucks. Not supporting that at all. But the skill sets, and actually, how do we convert those into something positive? It's often, you know, and it works both ways about lived experience, recognising the skill sets of people with professional skills, solicitors, accountants, chief execs, operational directors, all that sort of stuff. You know, and it's looking at the skills that are not just looking at that person and the label that we've attached to it. So positivity, strength-based approach. Okay, so those are the three principles, and if you hang on to those rather than getting caught up in that huge thing about the manuals and things like that, just hang on to those three things, and that will guide you through any co-production that you do. Okay, so let's talk about some keys to getting. There are 3 keys to helping to get people involved that are really important. The first one is about incentivizing people. So make sure people receive appropriate incentives to work together. This can be funding travel, food, and contributions for their time. Vouchers and pizzas go a long way in my world. Absolutely. Slice of pizza, cup of tea, and a voucher. Room's packed. Absolutely. It certainly helps. But here's the thing. Crucially, this should be offering purpose and a sense of belonging and a say in important decisions about their lives, about our lives. That's really, really important. I'm going to mention that a little bit later on when we talk about how do we get people involved in stuff in a room if we don't have that. Because that's really important, and that's the bit actually, that's the bit that genuinely does it for me. I've done so much stuff with so many people, research-wise and group-wise, and actually that giving people purpose and a sense of belonging, and giving them an opportunity to be involved in a decision about their lives is key. Okay, listen to people. We all have hopes and aspirations again. We all have hopes and aspirations, so let people be creative. Don't fear the different voices, but be honest and draw on the expertise of everyone to make sure you can get sustainable solutions. You know, we all have hopes and aspirations, and it's really damning when people take those away from us. And people want to tell you what their hopes and their aspirations are. I'm going to mention one later when we talk about managing expectations, but it was all about hopes and aspirations. And this is really, really important. And people want to know that they've been listened and heard. And when it comes to being heard, our next thing is feedback. So provide feedback. Make sure everyone sees the final bid. You know, that bit of feedback is crucial. Then people feel a part of something. You know, they feel a part of, they're getting their, being part of the developing their own futures. And make sure that people are informed and thanked about the work and the contributions that is made. This should be the start of remember this one, this should be a start of a positive journey which will make a huge difference to lives and the local community, because that is what this is all about. And we'll touch again on that later, you'll see. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit now about the ways to facilitate that involvement. Let me get to the right page. Where are we? Okay, so ways to facilitate involvement. It says one-on-one interviews, group conversations and surveys. So let's do a little bit of a benefit and challenges with each one of these things. So one of the things for one-to-one interviews, which is quite positive, is it takes less time to organise. bit of paper. We've all got phones, haven't we? We record stuff. We can just go and have conversations with people. You know, we could go find people and have conversations, and we know where people are. And some of the other positives around this, it can become more intimate. So what will happen or can happen is people can open up a lot more about their lives and stuff, because it's all relational, isn't it? It's about relationships. And what you can do is, if you're recording it, we record stuff all of the time. I'm recording this, yep. We record stuff all the time. You can get some absolutely brimming little quotes when you go back and listen to stuff, things that you might miss, you know, which will support your bid. One of the challenges with it, if you're trying to get through a group of people, the interviews can take longer. So if it's a one-on-one interview, you think, okay, I want to be 10 minutes or 15 minutes with someone, you try and stop someone in full flow when they're telling you everything about themselves. You know, when you've built, you know, they've connected with them really, really well, and they're telling you all about themselves and what their expectations or aspirations are for the future. You can't cut people down. And so they can take longer to do, because you're doing lots of little individual ones. But they're great to do. They're great to do. We can do group conversations, but that's about, so some positives around that are that they can be more creative. You get a group of people in a room, people bounce off one another, which is wonderful. Someone will say something, it'll spark off a thought in someone else's mind, and they'll say something and it'll go out to someone else's mind. They can be really, really creative, you know, and you can do a lot of people in one go. We facilitate groups of, you know, everything from half a dozen up to, I think we've had 50 in one group, up to 50 people. I wouldn't recommend 50 people, by the way. It's challenging unless you're a really good facilitator. But you can get a lot out of a group. And sometimes when you've got people who perhaps won't engage on a one-to-one, they'll feel more comfortable sat within a group and maybe just drop in a couple of little things. So it's a great way to get people involved. The challenges are, it takes more to organise. Okay, so you've got to advertise it, you've got to get people prepped and stuff like that, and make sure people are aware of it. Then you've got to make sure that if you're doing your incentives, you've got your incentives there, whether that's pizza or vouchers or whatever it is, you've got to get that organised. Having said that, there are lots and lots of groups that are already out there. Lots of groups, especially in the recovery world, whether it's recovery from mental health, drug, substance and alcohol misuse, the groups around homelessness. There are groups out there, or collectives of people that you can go to, you know, or places where people collect. They get together. I used to go to lots of drop-ins, just turn up at a drop-in. I used to turn up with a camera, a couple of vouchers and some papers and hold interviews. The other way is, the other thing that you can either do this individually, you can do it in, not necessarily in group, but you can do it individually, is to do surveys. They can be really powerful tools. We use them a lot. They're really, really powerful. They're quick and they're simple. There's people on the ground, anybody already working with people. Think about volunteers out there, support workers out there, whether it's supporting the accommodation or supporting drug and alcohol thing. There's people already out there who can do quick, 5-minute surveys. So it's a simple and easy thing to do. What I would say is we have so in this system, what we do is we've got a real habit of making things really difficult, haven't we? So a survey with 3 questions, we overthink it, and it suddenly becomes 6, and then 9, then 18, then 36, and 72. Before you know it, we're asking three different questions that ultimately ask the same thing, and people won't sit through big surveys. We did a national one recently that was asking people about, and unfortunately we can't share the individual areas, but we were asking people where they were, where they'd come from. So what hotel are we in at the moment, where they'd come from. I think we'd ask for a rating as well on where they were, and what did they want to move on to. I can categorically say from that, the fallacy that's out there, that actually people choose rough sleeping as a way of life, as a lifestyle choice, is absolutely incorrect. We categorically got the evidence that says that. What it might say, because people on streets, is because that's the best choice that they think at that moment in time. you know. So surveys, keep them quick and simple, but they're really, really useful. And for data and stuff and processing, people love that, the data bit. Okay, so how can we, thinking about how do we approach people and stuff, and how do we make this work? Well, the first thing is ask for help. You know, I often talk about help and how a word is absolutely incredibly powerful, and how so we're human beings. It's inbuilt in us, innate, that when people want something and ask for help, you want to help them. You know, go and look at our community. Take a step back and look at our community. They're all helping one another. When somebody's having a hard time, I say our community, I'm talking about those who are caught up in the chaos and caught up in that trauma and multiple disadvantage. They all help each other when the chips are down, you know. People want to help, you know. Matt Potts, if anyone knows him, tells a brilliant story about somebody who was suicidal and right on the edge, but turning it around, they asked for that person to help, and that person left what they were about to do and started helping, because they were focusing on something else, helping Matt do something, which is absolutely incredible. If we explain to people it's about their future and the futures of others, in my 10 years, I have done so much research. And, you know, one of the key things for me is when I go to our community, look, we're going to see if we can do it, but it might not help you right now, but it's also about the people that are following us, and we want to help them, don't we? You know, people want to help, and they're, as I said, but if you explain it's about their future and the futures of others, that group that they come from, you know, it makes a big difference. Don't make promises that you can't keep. We shouldn't be doing that anyway. And be honest. I think this is about this whole thing there, that those last two, about our congruency with what's coming out of here, our mouth, you know. So people from my community have grown up in or journeys have been different, often journeys different. And you know, the thing about kids are really, they seem to have that sixth or seventh sense, and they know what's happening, and they're so intuitive. Well, actually, that's a part, that intuition and sense of understanding is a part that's really well developed within our community, because it was about survival often. So be congruent with what you're saying, don't lie, be honest, and don't make promises that you can't keep. Okay, so one of the things, this is a great quote that, from one of our groups, just one little quote, and I thought this was absolutely amazing, from one of our groups who was involved in the bid process somewhere, made me think that they were thinking about me. Wow, think about it. Made me think they were thinking about me. Normally things happen, are done to us, and actually that switch there, the ramifications for that, for him and maybe other people that he speaks, you know, all of a sudden we've got the local authority isn't an enemy, it's a friend, because they're thinking about you. It's a huge thing, you know, one little simple statement. Okay, so I'm conscious of time now. Okay, barriers or challenges. So let's go on to the first one. Okay, so time and resources. Okay, I think one of the challenges, we know that we've only got, I think after today, you've got 8.5 days, work days left to get your bid in. So it's not a lot of time, is it? And maybe if you chucked in a weekend, you've got 10.5. So we're really stretched on time. I get that and I understand it. But to be fair, we have a captive audience, don't we? Most of you know where they're in hotels and B&Bs, aren't they? We haven't got to go running around the country looking for people. We know where they are. And I know that, okay, so we know where they are, but actually if we started to do it, maybe you've tried in the past and it takes a lot of time to get round and seeing everyone. So here's a little story for you. And this is about using our resources. We'll come on to in a bit. So we said that we'd done our survey, and I know that it was very short, but we got out of it what we needed. But it did inspire other places to do other types of surveys, other governing bodies and other local authorities and things like that. But some of the feedback we were getting, they were finding it really, really, really challenging. There's a wonderful person called Kim. Amazing, incredible person. She's a frontline worker. I think she's a frontline worker, but she has lots of lived experience. She went out in 2 days, achieved what her area couldn't achieve in almost 3 weeks. It's because she was really good at communicating, really good at connecting people. She knew where everybody, she didn't have to go looking for anyone. She knew where they were. She kept it simple, you know, and smart, really simple. Conversations, relationships, and she drew from them so much information within a couple of days, you know, and this was quite a big group of people that she spoke to. So much so, there's lots of stuff coming off the back of it, which is absolutely amazing. So we have a captive audience, and then we know that actually we know where they are. And if we're doing simple surveys, or even if we're doing a few one-to-ones or doing a group, you know, that time thing, we have the time. If it's about our attitude. What happens if you don't have any pizza? Because we do the pizza. We do pizzas and vouchers. What happens if you don't have the pizza? I mentioned earlier, actually, when you give people a sense of purpose, when you give them a sense of belonging, and when you give them a sense that they're having an input on their future, on what happens in their future, you'll be amazed who wants to get involved. You know, if you frame it right, you know, talking about help, and this is about you and your future and the future of your community, you know, that belonging and purpose and all that sort of stuff, they get that within their communities, and you nurture that and bring that into our world, or to your world around your survey and stuff. People want to be a part of something. They don't want to stand out on their own. They want to be a part of something, so they'll feel that they're part of this whole process. They'll feel that they're part of designing their lives for them and others around them. So don't, you know, if you don't have the pizza, if you can't get hold of the money for a pizza, 50 quid or whatever, you know, people will still do it. Senior buy-in. This is a challenge, because I know that that some of you perhaps in the room right now are writing the bids, and you can put it in. Perhaps some of you aren't writing the bids, and it needs to go at a senior level. What I can say is a couple of things. There's another great guy that I know called Mike, and he's been emailing me a lot, let me know what's happening in his area. And he was at a local meeting, and they were talking about the co-production and everything, and that got everyone in the room together, apart from people with lived experience. And actually, they weren't going to invite people with lived experience. The group consensus was we don't need them. Mike pulled out the guide book and showed them paragraph 53 and pointed out service users. That has changed. I think this whole question there about managing expectation, not just with people who are getting involved, but also thinking about that group and not frightening them with full-blown co-production. But actually, it is in the guidelines. And, you know, I've heard that there are a couple of people, or at least one person out there, who's just doing it and presenting it, you know, which is, so I know it's a challenge trying to get senior buy-in, but you know, if you go back through this PowerPoint, there's some really important bits on there that will help you to present a case if you need to get senior buy-in, you know, when we're talking about MLCLG and the guidelines and stuff. Oh. Okay, next challenge is skills. And I would ask, throw that back to you. You can sit there and say, well, I haven't got the skill to do this, and I don't want to do it, you know, I'm a bit fearful of it. I would ask the question, what skills do you have in your area? You know, if we're talking about co-production here and collaboration, people working together, Kim, absolutely lived experience, amazing piece of work. But she isn't the isolated case. There are lots and lots and lots of people out there with lived experience who are really, really good. Some volunteering, some in paid roles, some not working, you know. When I started, when I was in a 120 bed hostel. Back in the old hostels, it was chaos, absolute chaos. But I didn't want to get drawn back into the drugs and the alcohol stuff when I was in the hostel. So I made myself really active and was doing something for the community within the hostel. There are people out there like that. There are people in all the places that we've got people right now. It's just about looking at those and finding those and getting them to encouraging them, incentivizing them to help. If you're going to do group stuff, go to the recovery world. I'm sure there are people here right now in the recovery world, and they will tell you they have some of the best peer facilitators that you could possibly imagine. So if you're in the housing options team or a housing department now, and you're thinking, right, how can I facilitate a group? Pick up the phone and speak to the recovery world. Speak to the recovery provider in your area. They will know. There'll be smart AA groups, smart groups. There'll be all sorts of things going on with some great people who can help you, who will genuinely want to help and be flattered that you've asked. So have a look at the stuff that's around you, and also existing groups, you know. What I would say is for expediency and getting this done really quickly, trust the lived experience. They are really, really good. I mean, we could talk about it all day, but they're really, really good at how they connect with people and that rapport building, and can draw so much out of people in a really, really quick period of time, you know. So let's talk about the next group, which is fear. Okay, so I've got to speed up a little bit here, or we're on no time for questions. So fear. So expectations. So this is a real challenge. You know, we start speaking to people, what happened? Everyone's dreaming the cottage in the country with the roses around the door and the pony and the picket fence and all that sort of stuff. What if they ask for that? What if they ask for Buckingham Palace? What happens how do we manage that? So here's very, very quickly, here's a story about a guy called Paul, who I worked with for a number of years where I am. So Paul, context, alcoholic, Asperger's, been living on the streets. How he was alive, I don't know, for a long, long time. And it didn't matter what people tried to do, or what service he tried to do to get into accommodation, he wouldn't have it. So here's the rub. I used to spend quite a lot of time with him and sit and listen. He used to talk and just go around in a loop. And I'd wait for a pause and drop in, dunk something, and hopefully shake his little, stuck world that he was in, and maybe try and, you know, that's what I did. What I found out was that he had a flat, he got evicted, and he wanted a bungalow because in his head there was problems with people upstairs and downstairs in his flat, and he wanted a bungalow. But every time he was engaging with services, all the services were saying to him, you can't have a bungalow. You can't have a bungalow. But what they weren't doing is they weren't speaking to Paul. A council bungalow, by the way. Paul's mum and dad lived in a council bungalow. His auntie lived in a council bungalow. So when they kept on saying to him, you can't have a council bungalow, it didn't register, he couldn't understand it. So when I was working to Paul, I turned around to Paul and said, look, listen, Paul, if that's what you want, that's great. I will work with you towards that if that's your aspiration. I'll do whatever I can. But I'll tell you what, mate, it's going to be a long journey, no guarantees, but we'll do it together. Let's start taking those baby steps towards it. There's a whole bunch of stuff we'll have to do, but we can start somewhere, can't we? So we got into accommodation, short-term accommodation, then got into a hostel. Every time I walked away, I was disengaged because of growing this over a long period of time. Most of the time that he had challenges with any accommodation is because they turned around and said, you can't have a bungalow. Now, he didn't know whether he could get a bungalow. I didn't know whether he could get a bungalow, but I'll tell you what, I was happy to work with him to try and get one. Because if his mum and dad had one, they are available, they must be, you know. The point being here, guys, the expectations, whatever people want, build it into their, build it as part of a move on strategy. If this is what you genuinely want, okay, well, you need to do some things, you know. Maybe it's go to college at some point, maybe it's this, maybe it's learn to drive, maybe it's, you know, all of that sort of, but the first step is this, you know. Letting people down. I've covered that already. Be honest with people. I know often we worry about letting people down, but if you're honest, I was completely honest with Paul. Didn't know we could get a bungalow, but we decided what we were going to do is work towards it and see where it led us to, you know. If you're honest with people, you're not going to be letting them down, as long as you know in your heart you've done everything you can. Getting it wrong. Let me tell you now, we have made more mistakes. I've made more mistakes, expert language made, but this is how we are where we are. Because if we want to grow and learn, we need to step outside of our normal comfort zone, you know. Don't worry about getting it wrong. Worry about not doing it. That's what we should be worried about, not doing it. Don't worry about getting it wrong. Okay, tokenism, which is a big one. So this is a quote from a local commissioner. Do we go out and do something tokenistic because of the time frame, or better not do anything at all because that's an insult? That was from a local commissioner, and it's something that I've heard more than once, but I've used this, I've asked permission, I've used this as a quote. We had a big conversation in a big group, and we talked about it, and we talked about, actually, we often talk about reframing stuff. So let's reframe that tokenistic thing. Let's say we wanted to do more and better, but because of the time frame, we couldn't, but we did the best that we could to the best of our ability. You know, this is really important here. That honesty and vulnerability is the thing that gives you your strength, by the way, but it also means that you don't have to come up with a full-blown co-production. If you've got a genuine promise to build upon it, you may well be super prepared for next time. I say that because actually a lot of the groups that are doing lived experience already have, a lot of the areas, they've got groups already existing. So it could be the start. And if you frame it that way, it's not tokenistic. You're not going in there having a chat, taking what you can, doing it and not listening. It's okay, we want you to be part of this. We're doing the best that we can for you. This is a start place, you know, and hopefully build towards your, or not will, it will build towards your aspirations, your long-term dreams and your hopes. But do you know what? From this, we're going to start to build. You know, we're going to start to build co-production and get you guys more involved, or whatever it is. That's how you take the tokenistic part away from it. So some key things for us on your journey of writing this bid. So be honest. Absolutely, be honest with yourself. Are you doing the best that you can? You're being honest with others. You know, so be honest. You know, do what you can. That's a quote I'm going to show you. But that's really, really important. Do what you can. So I'm speaking to Chris, you know, who works with me, and I sound a bit nervous about today. But our promise to our community is to do everything we could to encourage people to bring that service user voice into these bids. You know, so we're doing what we can. And I'm just, if you're nervous about doing the bid, trust me, I'm nervous. If those of you who are the first 10 or 15 in the room know that I went to loo quickly and splashed myself with perfume because I was nervous. What was all that about? But I'm here now talking to you guys, you know. So frame how you're going to present your stuff, frame so it's not tokenistic, frame it right so it's all positive. Think about your framing when you're doing or presenting any of your stuff. And by the way, when we talk about that, I haven't got a note, it's quotes. We use a lot of quotes. They are powerful because that's the genuine voices of people, you know. So put quotes in. I encourage it all the time in a lot of the organizations I work with. Anything you do, keep it simple. Don't try and overcomplicate it. If it starts to get overcomplicated, throw it away and start again. You know, try and cut it down to absolutely the minimum. Not when I say the minimum complication. You know, so if you're going to do a survey, 4 or 5 questions. You know, I'll share our survey with you. I'll pass it around in an email so you can see how simple ours was. But it was so powerful and so effective, you know, so keep it simple. And dare to imagine that you can go out there and you can do this and bring it into your bid and you have a successful bid. And dare to imagine that you build on this now and next time you're uber prepared and you sail through with your next bid from MHCLG. But also dare to imagine what it's like to be on the other foot, or the boot was on the other foot. Dare to imagine what it's like to be sat in a hotel room now, knowing lots of people are talking about you, sorting your life out, and you have absolutely no voice or no control in your future. I've been there. That is the most uncomfortable and unpleasant thing in the world. So yeah, maybe think about that when we're doing what we're doing. Here's a couple of quotes. Told you we use quotes. We should do what we can when we can, even if it's just a phone call. That's a call from our community, say, do what you can, when you can. And importantly, we should recognise that this is a part of a longer journey and that we'll all have to compromise along the way. We know that this whole thing is about relationships, and in relationships you give and you take and you compromise. Okay, I'm coming to the end. I just want to just mention this quick last before we go to Q&A, the essential nuts and bolts, definitions of co-production and examples. It's a course that we're running. That's the stuff. I'll stick it in. You'll see it in this PowerPoint. It's a great course to get onto if you're starting out in co-production. Yeah, so enough of that. Let's move to our Q&A, and let's see if there are any questions. I haven't looked at the, oh, let me get this over here. How does that go? Okay. The only question is, hi, will you be sharing your notes? And the answer is yes. If you've got any questions, guys, so you're going to get this PowerPoint, you're going to get a copy of the PowerPoint, copy of the survey, you're going to get a feedback sheet. Listen, if I'm not, you know what I do and what Expert Link do. I just think that potentially a feedback sheet, if we're asking you for feedback and you get the survey and you do it, there are opportunities, maybe some comments. We listen and learn from people all the time, and we share our learnings. That's maybe what I'll say. Let's have a look. We've got another question popped up. The links that people have posted in the chat, could add them to the share. Many thanks. That's from Sam McCarthy. The links that people have posted in the chat, could you add them to, right, okay, and we do. There's a whole, let me have a look at the chat. Seems there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. Yeah, okay. Who's that from? Is that Kevin? Yeah, Kevin's stuff's up there. That's a great resource, by the way, that Kevin's put up. What else have we got up there? Lots from Kev. Okay, yeah. What we'll do is I'll condense all the links in there. We'll condense all those. I wanted to get the email over to you as quick as I possibly can with all that stuff in. What I might do right now is, let me just grab, here's a link to the, I think it's working, I hope it is. Attendees. Okay, I'm not sure if that works. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Oh, and Chris has put it up there as well. There's the survey form. Listen, take it as an opportunity. We share all of our stuff and talk about the stuff that we do. I've been sharing, being really candid with you, some of the stuff that we've been doing and where our influence lies. Well, maybe not our influence, but where we're sharing our learning. And we will take learning from all of you guys and messages. Quite happy to do that. Let's have a look. Is there another question there? Highly interested. Did you learn from the process why the government decided bid process for? Okay. Right. So the question is, hi David, I'm interested. Did you learn from the process why the government decided on this bid process rather than directly to the user? Okay, so stays within the room probably, I don't know. What I do know is this, okay, what I do know is this, that when I was having a conversation at a very, very director level, they were conscious of the time. A bit later on because we're talking about this whole fund, and the interesting thing was, so they work up these documents, they take them to wherever they need to take them. I'll let you draw your own, conclusions on that. This is director level at MHLJ. They take it to wherever to get the money, and they have to explain stuff and things like that. I tell you what, I think quite often what we do is just point, my thing, and I could be completely wrong here, a lot of times we point at MHCLG and actually there's a bunch of guys up there doing their absolute best and working within the framework that they can work within. I know that they are conscious of the time. I never directly asked about how the process came about or why they chose that process or why they chose the time, but they know, and I don't think that they would be, unless they were stuck within some sort of framework or boundaries. They are not, these are beautiful people. They're not going to sit there going, right, how can we mess up local areas and local authorities? They're absolutely not like that. Completely the opposite. Wonderful people. You know, like I said, they've come on our training. We speak to them. Our NLP speaks to them. We speak to, you know, they're great guys. They're great guys, and I think they're doing the best that they can within the framework they can work with. You know, and I think that when it comes to co-production and processes and timings, some of that may be out of their hands. I think some of that they have to explain to people, like explaining what co-production is. So that's all I can share on that. I'm afraid. Was that Paul? Yeah. How are county and district board councils expected to work together to provide housing solutions? So one of the things that I would say, how do you get together? I know that this is short, really short notice, and I absolutely empathise with all of you out there who are trying to do your best, who haven't got the time, just trying to get. If you think about what they were taught, the guidelines was all the different providers and parts of the system together. Trying to organise any meeting like that takes longer than 5 weeks. You had 5 weeks to do the bid. You know, trying to get someone senior enough mental health services, drug and alcohol services, accommodation, all of that sort of stuff. The outreach team, all of that. Trying to get those people together in a room was a challenge, and I think that they recognise that. So how are county and district borough councils expect to work together to provide housing solutions? From Kevin, I'm not sure. What I would say though is take the learning from this time and use it for next. There are going to be other opportunities. There's going to be more money in another year's time. I would take this opportunity now as a lesson. I'm hoping that MHCLG, well, I know they'll take it as a lesson, but they'll take the lesson, try and make sure that they can develop ways to make it better for people next time. I think the onus is on us as well. Let's start off with small conversations with people, bring those into our bids. But as I said, with the tokenism, you avoid the tokenism. Let's do something better next time. I think this is a real opportunity, knowing that, if we think about the way that MOCLG thinks and the way that they act, actually they're talking about co-production. Let's get on board with that, you know, as challenging as it might be. And it might not mean, let's not aim for perfection this time. Let's just do the best we possibly can right now, as little as it is, but with the promise to build for next year, you know. I think that will be a great place. And that applies for local authorities as well as county borough councils. Okay, Grant, we need to try to tell people who are local government and national that doing it on short timescale isn't very helpful. And like I said, Grant, they know that it's not the most helpful thing in the world. And I'm sure that they haven't sat there going, we're only going to give you 5 weeks. I think there's a whole bunch of influences on there. One of them might be, I'm not saying it is, but it might be the fact that government saying, I want the money, or we want the money out the door at this time, you know. And ultimately MHCLG work for the government, don't they? You know, the civil servants work for the government. So again, it's not about apportioning all the blame at that place. I think it's a lot more complicated than we think. But I'm absolutely positive, because they're conscious of the time thing, Grant, that they'll work on it for next time. Okay, are there any more questions or anything in the oh, I've lost my little, oh, there we are. Okay, any more questions? Okay, that's just about the questions. Finish up on the question, guys, and it's 12 o'clock. We've done in time. Seriously, any more questions at all? Email us. Quickly put one in the Q&A now, like I said, but email us. We'll send out the PowerPoint, a link to a video or audio, whichever I can do. I'm not the most technically gifted person in the world. We are recording this. Let's see what happens. I'll hopefully get up there for you. We'll collect the links that are in there and share those as well. So guys, I want to thank you for your time. I hope you really appreciate the ability to be able to share and communicate with the other guys here. Go out into your worlds now. Be the best that you can and do the best that you can. But go with knowing that that we from our community lived experience, actually appreciate everything that you do, however small it is. We love you loads, and we'll see you again in the future. And look out for other courses and stuff that we do, even the free ones. They'll be beneficial. Take care, guys. Thank you very much for this